Hey everyone, welcome. This is Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. It is Tuesday, February 13th, and this is live right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios in Lubbock, Texas. Beautiful day in Lubbock, Texas today. All the snow melted off around here. I know some of them up north still have some, but it was a beautiful day. We're back to it. And we're also live on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio and 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation and 987radio.com if you want to listen to us anywhere in the world, or the Live 365 app on your phone. You can catch us there as well. So all those are places that you can get us if you want to learn about health and you want to talk about health. That's what we do every Monday through Friday from 6 to 7. And we come to you right here and we just talk about health. And so tonight, I'm excited. We got a good show tonight. We had a good one last night, and we took on Monday night. We take health to church. So we take the lesson that we learned on Sunday at church, and then we apply it to health. And last night was a really good night for me. The lesson that we learned was a really good one for me because it took me into some. It gave me some wisdom about exactly kind of why some people have a hard time with being healthy, and some people don't have a hard time with being healthy. And sometimes in our life, we have a hard time trying to make healthy choices, and we don't really know why. And if you want to go back and you want to know the answer to that question, go back and watch last night's show because it will give you a little bit of insight. When talking about greener pastures, talking about the next place, if I could just be in the next place, my life would be better. And the truth about that is that if you're not guided there in the health and wellness realm by your why, which is really your spirit. I mean, let's don't be crazy about it. That's what it is. You get led by the Spirit. If you're led by the Spirit, the next place is fine. But if you're not led by the Spirit, it's not. And so many times we don't really define what we're up to, and then we don't know what to do about it. So we don't like this place and we don't like that place. I don't like being unhealthy, and I also don't like being healthy. Like, I hate vegetables. I'm not going to exercise. Are you kidding me? Like, I'm not going for a walk. I hate that stuff. But I hate being fat and miserable and joint pain and all the things that go along with being unhealthy. So what am I supposed to do, right? Well, you got to define your why. You got to see what you're up to. So we went through that last night. You guys can go back and watch it. I got a lot of stuff for tonight, so I don't want to get too much into it. But when I got home last night, my good friend from Roswell, MJ Lewis, called me, and awesome chiropractor. His wife Katie is an awesome chiropractor. I mean, I don't think the people in Roswell understand the level of chiropractic care that they have. I grew up in Roswell. I'm telling you, like those two right there in town working on people of all ages, from moms to little babies. Katie's got a pediatric practice with basically moms and babies and kids, and MJ's taking care of everybody else. And so put those two together, Rock Chiropractic in Roswell, fantastic place to be. And I really don't think the people over there understand the level of care that they're getting from Rock Chiropractic. It is really a fantastic place. I know those two guys. I've known them since they were in school. We used to work together. We're still really good friends. But MJ called me last night, and I get lucky sometimes because he's got about a 10-minute drive, which is, I don't think it's 10 minutes. I think maybe by the time he leaves the gym, walks to his truck, thinks about it for a minute, drives home, sits in the driveway for a minute, then walks in the house, talks to me for another minute. Then it's about 10 minutes. So, because Roswell's not that big, you can drive all the way across town in 10 minutes. But he called me last night on his drive home from the gym because they own a CrossFit gym and they do tumbling inside the CrossFit gym. What an awesome place that is. They do all that stuff together. And so MJ calls me last night and just talking to me on his drive home and said he caught the first half of the show. And he asked me a question. He's like, and he said, Doc, you talk about how you decided to quit eating sugar. And he said, what I'm interested in is why you start doing, like, what was the brain mechanism that caused you to stop doing that? Like, how did you do that? How did you pull that one off? And and so I'm not exactly sure right there. Um, Sorry, we lost our live feed there for just 1 second, but I think we're back on there. And let me see what's going on with my. I spent all this time and energy to get my system back up, and I don't know if we're working right or we're not working right, but we're good on the radio. We'll keep going with it until we see what happens. But um, he asked me about the mechanism. What was the mechanism that caused you in your brain to make that choice? And I've been thinking about that since he called last night. I've been thinking about, man, I don't know for sure the answer to that question. I don't know why, but I started thinking about it this afternoon, and I was like, I think what happens, and this is my own take on this. So this is not literature defined right here. This is just my own take on it. I think what happens is you learn and you learn and you learn and you learn, and life lines up. Eventually, you take all that stuff, and then eventually one day it just lines up right for you. Like you finally see it. You finally have the environment to handle it. You finally have the the stacks of stuff, and that's why I think a show like this is kind of cool, because it just keeps stacking. I know it sounds so repetitive that we talk about the same things over and over again, but I just really think that you guys that are listening to the show over a long period of time, you're still gonna start to stack that stuff together, and then one day you're gonna see something, and you're not really gonna know why you know. It's that four quadrant thing where you start off that you don't know that you don't know. Remember how that one goes? And then you finally know that you don't know. And then you get to the point where you don't know that you know. And then finally, you just know that you know. I guess that's how it goes, right? So I don't really know how I got there, but I started to think about that. And one of the things that I thought about to answer MJ's question is I thought about listening to Jordan Peterson talk about being the best I can be. And I think I actually played that for you on the radio one night. That video that he's talking about, find the absolute best thing you can do and set your life up to do that thing. Like it's like I think that had to have something to do with it. I think maybe maturing a little bit. I think finally getting to my 50s, like trying to analyze where I'm at. I don't know why, but I was thinking about that today, and I just thought, man, I need to give Dr. Peterson some credit on that, because I think he I don't know how many times I've heard that in different forms. And my high school football coach was a master motivator. He used to teach us stuff like that all the time. I had an opportunity to be around some good guys while I was in college. I've had an opportunity to study a lot of people. John DeMartini is one of my mentors. That's a chiropractor. That's a deep thinker. I love those kind of deep thinking thoughts. It's part of the reason we set this show up like this on the radio. When I was talking to Ken and I actually got a chance to do this show, it's typical on a radio show that you just do a certain segment, and then you come in with commercials, and then you do a certain segment and you come in with commercials. That's traditionally how it works. And one of the things that we talked about was just having the whole segment of time. So breaking it down into two segments where I have 26 minutes, I think, is how much time I've got in these segments to try to cover something in a deep way. Now, I'm not very good at it, so it's going to take me a while to get to where I can break it all down and make it worth your time and worth your thought. And I know that radio is infotainment, right? I know that social media is infotainment, but I just think there's a few of you that you'll get infotainment on the other 23 hours of your life, and you might just want some deep stuff. You might want some thoughts. Might want some things that has some a bone with some meat on it, as my dad used to say, right? So that's what I love about the deep thinkers, and that's one of the things that got me there. When I thought about it, set yourself up to do the absolute best thing you could do. And then that Fauci thing came along where I felt like that the virus was hanging around in my gut, and it was making me, and it was kind of like a connection maybe between trying to set myself up to do the absolute best thing that I could do in a day, and then recognizing some of the obstacles that were in my way in order for me to do that. I think maybe there was a connection right there. If I can create any sort of rational brain about it, I think maybe there was a connection right there. I was trying to set myself up to do the absolute best thing I could do in a day. And then I started to realize that sugar, and in particular, how it was going to be affected with the virus, how those two things were working together. And I was like, wait a minute, like, no. And then I got super competitive at that point. But why I got competitive at that point when I didn't get competitive over the last 30 years, I can't answer. But that's why I'm trying to say maybe it preceded in thought with the idea of trying to set myself up to do the absolute best thing that I could do in a day. And then I got competitive again. And the combination of those two is where I might actually have done that. So I just wanted I want to say thanks to MJ for calling me last night and asking me that question. And then I wanted to say thanks for Dr. Peterson for teaching me that stuff. He's written some great books. This Maps of Meaning book is difficult. It's a very hard book to read. And it says exactly what it's trying to do. It's trying to explain the maps of meaning of our life, why we actually have the meaning that we have, and what it's all about. And so it's very difficult. It led me into the Master and His Emissary, but the 12 Rules for Life and another 12 Rules for Life. I don't remember what that second book is called, but both of those there. And then the YouTube presence that Dr. Peterson has that constantly teaches us how to set ourselves up for success, and really breaks down the things to give us the opportunity. I can't thank him enough for all of his work. Maybe he'll. I hope he gets it. I'm sure he does. He gets lots of praise, but I really appreciate him for it right there. So that was a start. One of the things that we do, and what this show is going to be about tonight, is it's life. It's life with Jason Clemmons, DC, right? So one of the things that I do is I learn from others. And I actually wrote that down to answer that question. Is I humbled myself to be able to listen to other people and try to learn from them. If I think I don't learn from everybody, I'm not that humble, so I'm not that mature. So if I don't think that you have anything to teach me, then I probably don't listen to you, which is probably a fault on my part. Because if I was more mature, I would realize that there was a lot more I could learn from a lot more people. But I'll work on that. But I try to learn. So I'm watching videos. I'm always studying, and I'm watching videos and things and trying to learn stuff. And I saw two videos last night that I think are really cool. And I wanted to share those with you tonight. So this is not original stuff by any means. None of it is. But maybe the way we present it just to you just a little bit on some things that you might want to think about. And then I want to get in. I had a letter that I found on my desk that was written to me last year, and I didn't get back to the gentleman who wrote it. And he wanted to know about what he might could do to help his dementia. And I told him, I said, look, you can get in, you can do, first of all, I'm sorry I didn't get back with you quick enough. And then second of all, I said, hey, that the End of Alzheimer's book, the Dale Bredesen Recode. And Recode is the reverse cognitive decline is what he actually does. I mean, he changes Alzheimer's. So in the second part of the show, I want to get into that. But there's two videos, and it's going to take just a second to go through it. But I want you to hear it because you may have. First one is with Dr. Michael Hall, who I've mentioned on the show before. He is kind of a mentor to all of us in chiropractic neurology. He's one of the smartest dudes we ever get to hang around with, and he's taught us a lot. And he's taught me my functional neurology stuff, and a lot of it, along with MJ and Kati, who taught me a lot of the stuff as well. So But I was listening to a video about POTS and positional orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So you may have someone that's kind of become a thing, like in popularity over the last couple of years. Someone in your life might have POTS, and I wanted to explain it to you kind of in a technical term so that you had a better idea of what was happening to you and how chiropractic care can help you with it. And so, especially in young ladies. So basically what POTS is when a person is sitting down and you check their heart rate, and then when they stand up, all of a sudden their heart rate jumps like 30 beats per minute. Like it where okay, so you're sitting there resting and your resting heart rate is 72 beats per minute. And then all of a sudden you stand up. What should happen is you should increase about 10 beats per minute. Like you should go maybe from about 72 to 82, but that's about it. Maybe a touch more than that, but then immediately your heart rate will start to slow itself back down. But in POTS, that doesn't happen. It goes from 72 and it goes all the way up to like 102. So you got that 30 beat jump that's going right there. And it makes it difficult, and there's some things that go on with it, and it's a sign of abnormal nervous system function and critical physiology, crisis physiology, as Dr. Hall called it. So what happens is, especially in young ladies, I'm not going to get too deep in this one, but you have what's called a vestibular sympathetic reflex, meaning that whenever you change your vestibular system tells you where you are in space. It's those little canals that are inside your ear, and it's going to tell you where you are in space. That's why you can move your head around and you can look around and you don't lose your balance because your vestibular system is firing, right? So there's a vestibular sympathetic reflex that when we stand up and the blood starts to drop, that we can fire that reflex in a way that makes sure that we keep the blood pressure in the blood in our head, the oxygen in our head proper. Well, when the head goes, especially in young ladies, when the head goes forward, it's called the VSR, vestibular sympathetic reflex. The VSR is excited, and what happens is we get a limitation. I didn't explain that exactly right, but just understand that whenever you stand up, your blood vessels are going to constrict and push blood back up into your head. Okay, so we get a limitation of cardiac return from the legs to the heart. When you stand up, your head goes forward, and and you get an excitation of this VSR, this reflex, and you're going to get a limitation of cardiac return from the legs to the heart. When cardiac return is reduced, stroke volume is also reduced. So when you don't get enough blood flow back to the heart, the amount of blood that the heart can pump, each pump gets reduced. So stroke volume being reduced causes cerebellar ischemia or syncope or dizziness or lightheadedness type of stuff. So when we don't have enough stroke volume, when we reduce, my wife's going to laugh at that one. When we reduce the amount of blood flow that our heart can put out, and it's being reduced because we reduced the amount of blood flow from our legs back to our heart because of this reflex, then we can't get enough blood flow into our brain, and our brain starts to become ischemic, which means we start to lose blood. We start to lose the oxygen in the blood, and now that makes us lightheaded or dizzy, and that can cause problems for us right there. And so that in turn causes the heart to beat faster, because when we start to become ischemic, then all of a sudden, when that reflex gets excited, and we don't get enough oxygen to the brain, now that's going to cause another reaction, which is going to make the heart try to beat faster so that it can get the blood up into the brain. And there you go. And that's how we can measure that whole system that's going on. And so the question is, why is that happening? Well, the very first thing that Dr. Hall points out is the thyroid adrenal relationship. And the stress, what we call crisis physiology, which is really interesting, right? All based on all of the things that we've talked about in on this show, and the things that we keep talking about on this show about the up and to the right, over to the left, get out of the unknown, kick it over to the known, get out of sympathetic response, take yourself and get away from anxiety, get away from all that sort of thing, get out of that fight or flight response on the right side, which is firing down to the adrenal glands, which is releasing cortisol, which is giving us some issues if it's too much and too often. Too much of it, and it's happening too much. Of course, cortisol is great for us in short periods of time. It's great for us in the middle of the night when we need to get our blood sugar back up. There's times that cortisol is good for us, but there's times when it sets us off and it doesn't do us good. So the thyroid adrenal function relationship is the first thing that we can do in the office. That's something that we want to make sure is to make sure that that up and to the right, over to the left thing is working. And do you have enough nutrition to support your thyroid gland and your adrenal gland? That's the first one. The second one is the tone of the cervical spine. So as the head goes forward, this VSR is heightened. This reflex is heightened. So cervical tone, we talk about tone on the show a lot, right? So muscle tone, how much you can, like if you made a fist and you made that fist and you squeezed really hard on that fist, then that would be considered increased tone, right? That's not comfortable. That's not comfortable. If you make a fist and you squeeze that fist and you just keep squeezing it and you keep squeezing it, that's not comfortable. So what would be better is to just like relax that a little bit. Relax that tone. Well, when you lose your cervical curve, you have a reversed cervical curve or a flattened cervical curve or a forward head posture. What you're doing is you're increasing this VSR, this vestibular sympathetic reflex, and that's causing this whole thing to kick in again, and where we lose that cardiac input and we lose that stroke volume, and then we have to increase that heart rate. So that's the second thing that we could look at is your cervical curve. So your thyroid adrenal function, and then what's your cervical curve? We analyze the cervical curve on every patient. We do posture pictures and x-rays on every, unless you're a newborn child or really a child that even some children, I'll still shoot a cervical curve on them. We even do a cervical curve in our nutrition program. I don't know of another place in the world that does a cervical curve x-ray for the nutrition program. I've never heard of it in my entire life. That's how much I believe in the cervical curve. That's how much I believe in the importance of the cervical curve, that I'm sure I'm not. I would love to meet the other people because they got to be cool people if they're actually out there doing cervical curves and evaluating it in their nutritional program. But the importance of that cervical curve and the way that it relates to how your brain functions and the way that it relates to your sympathetic stress or your fight or flight response is massive in all of the activities that you do in your life. Every single thing that you do as a human being is related to whether or not you're being threatened or you're not being threatened. Think about that for a second. Every relationship, everything. I was driving down the street thinking about that on my way to Littlefield this afternoon. I was thinking about it, and when I was thinking about it when I went and got adjusted, and I was driving through all the traffic, and I was like, "Am I threatened? Do I feel threatened by any of this right here? Am I freaking out with all this traffic and these people turning in, and someone getting in front of me?" And all of the things that's going on. And I was trying to think about that, and I was trying to dampen my sympathetic response. But every single thing that a person does every day is wrapped around the idea of whether or not they're getting threatened or they're not getting threatened. And if you feel like you're getting threatened, you're going to react a certain way. And if you feel like you're not being threatened, you're going to react a different way, right? And that cervical curve has a lot to do with that. And the last thing he talked about, he said, check the mesencephalon, which you guys won't understand what that means, but he said, check and see if it's escaping. And you know what he said to do? He said, check the pupillary light reflex. Yeah. I was like, thank you, Dr. Hall. That's pretty awesome right there. What do we talk about when the upper rational brain gets fatigued? We talk about lower brain escape, right? That's what he means right there. Are you having lower brain escape? Are you in this lower brain escape problem because you're not getting suppression from the upper part, the rational part of your brain? And that's a huge thing. That's why this whole thing that we talk about every night, this up and to the right, over to the left thing, I'm telling you, I can map it to almost every single thing that's going on in your body. That you take that and nutrition and take those two things. Of course, you got to have a spiritual life. No question about that. We all know that your spiritual life is super important. But those two things right there, they map out. So those are the things that we could do for a POTS patient. It's like not the what, but the why. Why is this happening to me? Not the diagnosis. I don't care that you have the diagnosis. I want to know what the underlying physiology is, and I want to know what's going on with your brain and the up and to the right and the over to the left. And that's the part that's super important to me. So we're going to head up to a break right now, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about motivation a little bit. And for those people who just have no motivation at all, I'm talking about another super video I saw last night from Andrew Huberman. I want to share that with you guys tonight, and hopefully we can get to the recode stuff. So we'll be right back right after these messages. Yeah, so that whole thing is something that I know we talk about it. You guys have seen it. You guys have seen it so many different times that what is that we're talking about, right? And that right hemisphere runs off adrenaline. That left hemisphere runs off dopamine. That right hemisphere is the unknown. That left hemisphere is the known. Then we get this conversation back and forth between the two. But what it starts off with is it starts off with this up and to the right, over to the left, right? And so when this up and to the right thing, we got to get the massive part about upper brain is the inhibitory effect of what's happening in the lower brain. When my upper brain, my senior class is in charge, I'm inhibiting my lower brain. I'm turning that lower brain down. This is where I get that escape. That's where I get all this involved down here below. And I don't want that. I want that upper brain to keep that lower brain dampened until I actually fight a tiger. When a tiger's in the room and I got to fight a tiger, man, let's go. Let's get on. Let's get it on. Did you see Kelsey almost knock down old coach on the sideline of the Super Bowl? Right? That's an inability to inhibit. That's a lower brain emotional state. That is not the way you play a football game. I've been playing a football game my entire life. That is not the way you act in a football game. Go back and watch Joe Montana. Go back and watch the greats. They don't behave that way. That's not the way that you want your superstars to behave. That's an inability to inhibit is what that's all about. It's inappropriate. Okay, everybody, this is Jason Clemmons. We're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. And we are just breaking down some stuff tonight. We are on fire, so I hope you guys are enjoying this. So next article that I had, video that I watched last night was a guy that's become a superstar here in the last year or two, and his name is Andrew Huberman. If you haven't found him, he's super great. I mean, he does a great job. We got to coach him up just a little bit on chiropractic because he's not exactly sure what we do for a living. But once he figures that out, he'll be like all on board, and it won't be any big deal. We just got to get him coached up just a little bit on that. But he's a neuroscientist from Stanford, ophthalmologist, teaches something. I don't know. He's a good dude. I don't know if he's a good dude. He has good stuff. So last night I'm watching him, and he's talking about motivation and dopamine. And we've talked a lot about motivation and dopamine. So But there was two videos. They're about 8 minutes long, each of them, and it's under neuroscience. You can do neuroscience, Huberman, and then I don't even know if I can get. Let me see what. Um, yeah, so it says neuroscientist. This simple habit stops procrastination, and the other one was called "This simple skill keeps you motivated for life." And so both of those were great. If you want to go back and watch them, you can watch them on YouTube. Andrew Huberman, Huberman, really great. So it was talking about overcoming procrastination, right? And so what if you're one of those people who just can't get yourself motivated to do anything? Or what if you have one of those kids that's just in that state where they just can't get themselves motivated to do anything? You know, the trap that we've got going on right now with that is that we've got just enough. We've got, so many times we've talked about that, and we talk about it. I'm gonna show it again, because remember, with that left hemisphere, right? That left hemisphere is that dopamine, and that left hemisphere dopamine situation is go back to our bell curve with Dr. Lustig, and remember, we got to get in that middle state right there. And so if we're low on dopamine, we're not going to have any motivation. We're not going to want to do anything. But what we'll get is external sources of dopamine in the form of excess calories and social media. That gives us just enough dopamine to get by and be unmotivated. And that is a trap right there. Like, that's a difficult little situation that we can get ourselves into, because we can get ourselves into a trap, and we will. Thank you, Mini Donuts VP, for the comment. I really appreciate that right there. I don't know who that is, but that's super awesome that you said that. So I'm glad we're helping you out. But what you're not motivated, and your child is not motivated. What is your child going to do? They're going to eat excess calories, and they're going to look at their phone, right? And that's going to give them just enough dopamine to keep them unmotivated but satisfied with enough of their life, which you and I both know is horrible, right? That's not going to be good for them in the long run. Like, that's not what we want. So what Dr. Huberman was talking about was, how can we actually get out of that unmotivated state? And what is it that we can do to get us out of that unmotivated state? And so one of the things that he talked about is doing something that's harder. That's harder than what you're doing now. Because here's kind of the way it happens and this is his stuff right here. So this is not my stuff. This is my interpretation of his stuff, right? So you get an increased amount of dopamine followed by a crash of dopamine on the other side, kind of wave. You got no motivation at all down here in the bottom, but you got this wave. So you get just enough dopamine that you have just a little bit of reason to do something, but not much, right? It's kind of a C- lifestyle right there. I don't really care. I'm not gonna make an A. Forget this. I'm just gonna get by with life, right? So one of the things that he recommended is actually finding something, because this is kind of what this is pleasure and pain. There's a pleasure and pain wave that we go through. So we kind of have a pleasure where we kind of enjoy the pursuit of it. Yeah, we look at our phone, but when we're looking at our phone and we're getting the dopamine from it, from Instagram and YouTube and those things like that, but we're not really getting all that much enjoyment out of it. Like, at the end of the 2 hours that we've been sitting there looking at our phone, it's just kind of like blah, right? So one of the things that gets us out of this little wave right here is to actually do something that sucks more than being unmotivated. Okay, yeah. We want to create a pain response that's worse than being unmotivated. Now, be very careful that we're not talking about injuring yourself. And he made it clear, and I want to make it clear, we're not talking about injuring yourself with pain. No tissue damage, no cutting yourself, none of that stuff, right? That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is a healthy way of creating a situation to where we actually have kind of create a little bit more pain. And what will happen is it will steepen the curve. And when it steepens the curve, we get a rebound effect because the steeper the curve down, the steeper the curve up. And that closes the gap on time to get us back to motivation right there, if we can find that. And he's like, what are some of the things that we can do? Well, like you could do 20 push-ups. Like that might be something, like, especially if you don't want to do it. And it was so cool to me. It was so cool because I listened to this last night. I had this conversation. I was with myself. I was talking. I was working myself through all that, and I was thinking how cool that was. And then I went and got adjusted today, and it was so. I walked in the door, and the girl that works at Dr. Carson's office. She had a different haircut with some, like it was curly today or something. And I said, "What'd you do? You got some curls and some highlights today?" And she was like, "Well, I actually took my extensions out of my hair. And when I take my extensions out, sometimes I don't even fix my hair because it's so curly. And I just came to work without fixing it. And, I just got tired of those extensions. I just got tired of dealing with all that stuff. So I just said to heck with it and whatever." And I was like, that's perfect. You see what happened to her right there? She wanted the extensions. She got the extensions. But after a time, the extensions just became like blah, like social media. And she lost her dopamine. She lost her motivation for those right there. And I told her, I said, well, you should do something that sucks, that you hate doing, that's more painful than your extensions. You should do that. And she said, like, what do you mean? Like clean out my pantry? And I said, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Like clean out your pantry. Like that would be, and she was like, oh. And I said, yeah, if you don't like cleaning out your pantry, then go clean out your pantry. It sucks worse than dealing with your extensions, which now pushes that down steeper, which gives you a rebound. And what will happen is you will find the motivation back to want to go back and get your extensions back in your hair and go back and do that again. You'll find your motivation. If you find something, I thought it was cool. It was like the perfect thing to have the conversation. And so she said to me, she said, well, I guess next week if I have my extensions in my hair, then you'll know it worked. And I said, yeah, and I'll know you cleaned your pantry. And she laughed and she was like, yeah. So finding something, one of the things that he talked about is meditation. And this is a very specific type of meditation. And it's meditation that you actually have to sit still, close your eyes, and not think about anything at all. And just pay attention to your breathing. That's it. And he said that if first of all, if you don't feel like doing that, that sounds irritating to you, to be able to sit there and do that, then you're on the right track. If that sounds irritating to you, then you're on the right track, and that's a good thing. Okay? Now, make yourself do it. And it's super hard to do because it's super hard to think about nothing. So you just have to focus in on your breathing. And you just have to, the only thing you're going to pay attention to is your breathing. So if that becomes difficult to do, if it's hard to make yourself sit still, and it's hard to focus enough and close your eyes enough and just focus on your breathing and don't think of anything, and you start to get irritated, kind of unpleasurable, kind of painful to sit there and do that. Like you have to make yourself. That's what cold water immersion is kind of like. Cold water immersion is going to make you is going to make you be uncomfortable while you're doing it, but you make yourself do it then that leads back to an increased amount of dopamine on the other side. That the pain is greater than the unmotivation. So now you've got the increased amount of dopamine. You get an adrenaline rush, and adrenaline and dopamine are right there together, as Dr. Huberman pointed out in the video. And he's talking about how adrenaline is actually made from dopamine. And if you go back to last night's show and you listen to the beginning of it, and you remember what sugar does to the nucleus accumbens, MJ said it different and got me all messed up last night. Accumbens, sorry. The nucleus accumbens, ACCUMBENS. That was it. So, remember, further experiments revealed that both cocaine and sucrose treatments triggered identical cellular changes in the nucleus accumbens, including the formation of silent synapses in the D1, D2 cells of the brain structures deeply involved in reward processing. Remember that we had last night and on Friday. So now sugar is changing your dopamine, how you're handling your dopamine and your dopamine response, because you're getting your dopamine from that sugar, right? And that's changing this whole thing. So we've already got that going on. And so if you get yourself into a situation like meditation or like cold therapy, or one of my guys talked about, even when he got his tattoo on his arm, he had to sit there and it was very painful, but it was so rewarding, right? It was rewarding afterwards, and then you kind of get addicted to it. So that was something. If you're unmotivated and you don't feel like doing anything, just realize that the amotivation is what we sometimes call it. The unmotivation is related to the low dopamine. Who cares? Like if that little chemical's not working in your brain, who cares, dude? I'm not doing nothing. I'm not getting up and walking. I'm not cleaning my room. That's what Jordan Peterson taught me. It's like, make your bed. In the 12 rules for life, make your bed. Why? You don't want to make your bed, right? You don't want to make your bed every single morning. I made my bed this morning. You don't want to make your bed. It's like, well, do it anyway. Why? Because number one, you can. It's something that you could do. If you would do it, it would make you create order in your world, but it would also, it's a little bit painful in the time that you have to do it, and it rebounds you up and out of, it gives you a dopamine hit because it rebounds you up and out of that motivated state without motivation, right? Okay, so the second video got into something that was super cool, and this reminded me of people like Nick Saban and Kobe Bryant and Tom Brady. Those people that have had amazing success at winning. One of the things that happens to us that is dopamine helps us build and create, right? Pursue, create, build. That's what dopamine does for us. It is the molecule of anticipation. We talked about that before. So the molecule of anticipation is whenever we strive for something and strive for something and strive for something, whenever we get it, if we make the reward of getting it so high, and we make the reward of getting it higher than the striving for it, then what will happen is we will crash on the other side, and we will crash our dopamine, and we will lose our motivation to do anything. And what Coach Saban always talked about at Alabama and all the way, in all the places that he coached, what he always talked about was the process. It's the process that is what it's all about. It's not the outcome. Of course, you want to win the game, like the Super Bowl. Those guys are in a trap right now. You know what? It was really cool. If you go back and watch Kittle, the guy from the tight end, the super tight end from San Francisco, they got into the Super Bowl, or they got into the Super Bowl like 2 years ago, or I think it was 2 years ago. And then they lost it. They lost in the NFC Championship game last year, and then they came back. Well, he said on the sidelines 2 years ago, "We will be back here. We will be back here." And it was the dopamine. It was the anticipation of the process, right? We're gonna do the process. We're gonna do the process. We're gonna do the process. Well, Kansas City has to be very careful because They went through the same process, which was dopamine, which was motivating. And motivating makes you build and create and do those things. But you got to watch out on the other end of that, because if they take the reward and they make the reward too big, they will fall on the backside of that into a motivated state, where they have no motivation left. And we can do that same thing if we understand that it's about the process. And what Huberman says right there, which was really cool, it's like we want to score the touchdown, but we don't want the end zone dance. We don't want the touchdown dance, right? Just score the touchdown like Barry Sanders used to do. Just go score the touchdown and then just throw the ball to the referee and go back and get ready to do another play, to have another drive. Get ready for the next process. Just go right back to it and get ready for the next process. Don't make the reward so great that it's so much bigger than the drive through the process. Make the process the thing, because when you set yourself up, when you make the reward greater than the process, it's not about the outcome, it's about the process. Then the pursuit of it, steeper and deeper, you will quickly go back to a motivated state. So if you celebrating the win more than the pursuit sets you up for future failure, because it resets your baseline to a lower level of dopamine. That's why that's why cocaine and the drugs are so hard to get over, because the reward of the cocaine was so high that you chase it all the time, right? So I thought I would share that. You guys can go back and watch that video. I do want to do a little recode stuff tonight, but the big thing is it's the process. It's the process. It's the drive. It's the drive, because neurologically, the drive is never ending. How do you actually say that? The pursuit. I don't remember exactly the words that he said. It's craving work, dopamine and adrenaline. You will feel underwhelmed for a few days, and then you'll be right back into it, and you'll get motivated again. But it's not about it's the drive that we want. It's not the reward. Just keep driving through it, and then that's what we're looking for on that. So you guys can go back and see that. We got just a few minutes left. I want to get into just a little bit of recode stuff. So let's switch gears right here. So the end of Alzheimer's. If you have someone that's dealing with dementia, or you're somebody that feels like you're going into dementia, there's the End of Alzheimer's book. We broke it down. I think it was the very first book review we did all the way back in September. And I'm not going to do a book review tonight, but I wanted to talk about just the program, because Dr. Bredesen, Dale Bredesen, Bredesen, he is the guy that that can really help you reverse your dementia or reverse your Alzheimer's. And there's some key things that are super important. And the first thing is inflammation. And so he's got a program in the book that's called Recode, and that's basically the program that resets your brain and goes through it. So you can go back into September, go to our Facebook page, go back to the first Wednesday of September. I believe we did a whole deal on the End of Alzheimer's. That's the one you can watch. But in order to get to the Recode, what he says is that there's a bunch of blood work that needs to be done, and basically we're trying to get rid of some of the toxins and the molds and the things that are in your environment. We want to make sure that is done. We also want to check some things to get rid of your inflammation. And because getting rid of your inflammation is going to be vital to getting your brain to function the way it was supposed to. So some blood work things that you can check on. I'm not going to break them all down, but your C-reactive protein needs to be right. Your ratio of albumin to globulin needs to be right. Your AG ratio, at least 1.8. Your omega-6-3 ratio, less than 3, right? We know that. But we've always talked about that. We want to get that 6-3 ratio down, right? Interleukin-6, vitamin D. Vitamin D is one of those things that, like, especially in this time of year, it's super hard. It's because it's cold and we're covered up, right? Your thyroid status, your estrogen, progesterone status, your homocysteine levels, your insulin levels. I'm going to just kind of hit some of this. Your testosterone, your cortisol, progesterone, your copper zinc ratio. That's one that is important. Magnesium, selenium, heavy metals, arsenic, that sort of thing. Okay, so you got to get through those toxins, and then in the recode part of it, like some of the things that you can do. Here's the 9 steps. If you've got a dementia problem or an Alzheimer's problem, for each abnormality identified, we want to go beyond simple normal and get all the way to optimal. So whenever you do all your blood work, and if you have a problem with this and you want me to break it down for you, I'll make copies of my notes and I'll send them to you. So all you got to do is let me know. I'll be glad to do that for you. Or you can call me and I'll go over with them and we can do that too. But you're going to find abnormalities. Like vitamin D is one of them, right? The vitamin D levels that of normal are just enough to keep you from being sick. But that's not what he's talking about. We don't want normal. We want to go all the way to optimal. So I want vitamin D's in the 70s and 80s, right? I don't want them down in the 30s. That's number one. Let me see how much time I got. So I make sure I can get, I think I got time. That's number one. Number two, we want to address as many of the abnormalities as possible, not just one. So it's not just your vitamin D or your magnesium, but all of them. Your AG ratio, your copper zinc ratio, your thyroid function, all of these things, we want to make sure your omega 6-3 ratio, we want to make sure that all of those things are addressed, not just pick and choose some of them. This is the RECODE program from Dr. Bredesen right here. This is not me. Number three, for each treatment, the goal is to address the root cause of the problem it targets. Okay? We talk about that all the time. What is the root cause? The RECODE program is personalized based on the laboratory values we find to be abnormal. So they're going to go in there and look at those values and see what's abnormal. We can do some of this work with you here in the office. Just as for other chronic illnesses such as osteoporosis, cancer, cardiovascular disease, there is a threshold effect, and the combination, there's so much you can handle, basically, that threshold effect. The program is iterative, meaning there's phases and tweaks. We're going to work through a phase, we're going to tweak it a little bit. We work through a phase and tweak it a little bit. Drugs are the dessert, not the entree. Don't lead with the drugs. Trying to get dementia problems that's not the way to go. The earlier you start the program, the greater your chance of completing the reversal. And just about every element of RECODE, there is a workaround or crutch if you need it. So don't lose hope. So to get into the specifics of it, they're going to try to get one of the things that the nutrition part of it is what he calls the Keto Flex. I've only got a few seconds, but the Keto Flex 312. Don't eat anything 3 hours before you go to bed, and then see if you can go at least 12 hours before you eat again. And if you're really already into the dementia, see if you can push that to 16 hours. So if you go to bed at 10, then you go to bed at 10, then you don't eat anything after 7, then you push it all the way from 7 to 7 is 12 hours, and 4 more hours will be 11. And then that's where you would start to eat. And then you would try to eat your meat and vegetables, your nuts and berries, the things that we talk about. That's the end of the show. Sorry we didn't get too much of that, but I just wanted to remind you about it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. You guys have a great night, and we will see you tomorrow. And I want to make sure right quick that, yes, thank you for the comments. Thank you for the text. Thank you for sharing this with all your friends. I really appreciate that. We try to get this to as many people as we can. So I hope you guys have a great night. We'll see you guys tomorrow night at